we're all really privileged to play a role in what I think is a really important industry.
Yeah.
Advisors helping clients to deliver or to achieve their personal outcomes, to me, is a really honorable goal. And
Right.
so for us to be able to play a role in that, in even the simplest way, to make running the firm more efficient, so the advisor's not tripping over the paperwork and the process, and they can spend more time with clients. I see it as an all boats rising kind of a thing.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Don't Do That podcast. I am your host, Kelly Waltrich, and I am thrilled to be here today with my friend, Adrian Johnstone, the CEO of Practifi. Welcome, AJ.
Hey, how are you? It's so fun to be having this chat with you.
That's the first time I ever called you by your real name. I feel like I just know you as AJ, and every time somebody calls you by that, I'm like, who? Who is that? Do we use?
Well, yeah, it's like if someone calls me Adrian, I just assume I'm in trouble, which
Yes.
probably means I get called it way too often
Yeah.
because I'm so often in trouble.
That's how I feel if I hear my middle name. My mom, my whole life, Kelly Lynn. I always knew, run.
Oh dear.
You've
Yeah.
done something wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, my mother's British, and so the tone in her voice would get like real hackney, and it'd be
Yes.
like, oh dear.
I think you are my guest with the best accent for sure.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
good at something.
Yes, for sure.
Nature is being kind.
So why don't you tell everybody that's listening a little bit about you, a little bit about your background, and a little bit about Practifi. I'm sure it really needs no introduction at this point, but I think we can just give everybody a quick update.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Adrian. Hi, everyone.
AJ.
I am AJ. Yeah, I mean, it feels so informal. I'm Australian, obviously, by the accent. That's my win. That's the what to do, is be born in Australia, so you grow up with that accent, so you can export it, and people will think it's good.
Yes.
I'm CEO. I'm a co-founder originally, now CEO at Practifi. I've wandered around this industry in various guises for decades, which is really embarrassing, but pretty obvious given the color of my beard. When we want to talk about Practifi, I'll keep that bit light because I don't want this to be an advertorial. We're a kick-ass CRM for advisors, basically. That's what we do.
That's awesome.
We try and make advisor-client relationships and all of the hard work that goes into making that seem easy.
Perfect. And so the firm and the business has been under a little bit of a transformation since you stepped in as CEO. So tell us a little bit about that. What have you been up to?
What feels a little bit like the what not to do part of your podcast. So one thing that you shouldn't do is take over as CEO and tell the team there won't be much change.
Yes.
And then proceed to change pretty much everything.
Everything.
Because turns out people don't love that part.
Mhm.
So we have been we've been doing a lot. We've been really focused on our roots, I guess, which is RIAs. We grew up as a business loving everything about the independent advice market.
Right.
And we have clients in multiple countries, so I use that collective term, the independent advice market, but RIAs in all their guises in other parts of the world as well. And we had this sort of period that a lot of businesses do. It was like, well, how do we grow up and go up market and go left and go right and try and be everything to everybody? And since I took over as CEO, it's been, guys, we're actually awesome at RIAs, and we really love them. We love doing business with them. So why don't we focus on them?
Yeah.
And so we've been getting back to those roots over the last couple of years. Gosh, it's fun.
Perfect. So I've had a front row seat to you thinking through and refining your brand story over the last several years. And I think most recently you've ended up in a really good, authentic place. Can you just kind of give everybody a little view into sort of what that looks like for you? And
Yeah,
the evolution over the years, because I love watching that.
yeah. I mean, it's evolution is always fun to watch, but it's way more fun.
Painful. It's a little
It's
painful.
way more fun reflectively than
Yes,
it
that's
necessarily
fair.
is as you're living it. But
Yes, for sure.
look, I think for me, if I think about my view on I guess advice tech, wealth tech more broadly, not even just Practifi, is we're all really privileged to play a role in what I think is a really important industry.
Yeah.
Advisors helping clients to deliver or to achieve their personal outcomes, to me, is a really honorable goal. And
Right.
so for us to be able to play a role in that, in even the simplest way, to make running the firm more efficient, so the advisor's not tripping over the paperwork and the process, and they can spend more time with clients. I see it as an all boats rising kind of a thing. So one advisor helps one, perhaps small to medium business owner. They have less pressure in their life, so they make bigger bets in their business. They hire more people. Those people earn more income. They need an advisor. And
Right.
so for me, I think there's a real responsibility that comes with that, is to not jump on the latest fad and to not try and oversell things that look great on paper but aren't necessarily needed, all those kind of things. So the journey for us has been one of how do we just how do we be great agents in the industry? How do we understand that we have a role to play to make the advisor and their surrounding machine in their RIA a better place to be, so they can do better things for clients?
Yeah. You know what I love about that? I feel like lots of fintechs in our space try to figure out how to show through their message that they are the landing spot. They're the screen they want to have they want advisors to have open all the time. They're the hub through which all things should flow through. And I feel like what I love about the message that you have most recently landed on is that you're not trying to be that. You're trying to make the advisor shine and put the relationships back at the center of this business. And I think that sometimes with all the PE money and all the let's be everything to everyone and let's make sure that we're front and center, like I think that gets lost a little bit. So I really love that.
Yeah, there's whether it's PE money, whether it's founder focus, whatever it is, the motivations, there is often so much drive to just how do we grow faster?
Right.
And when you sit in a CEO role, there's an expectation that that's what you get out of bed for. So how do I grow? How do I grow? How do I grow?
Right.
And for me, I mean, growing is really important. And hi to our investors if you're listening in. Growing is super important, and obviously commercially that's everyone's goal. But you've got to do that in a way that's steeped in integrity and true to adding value, and the rest of it will take care of itself. And I see so many software firms that are still trapped in the grow at all costs
Yeah.
mentality, and they come out and say, we've got 160,000 integrations to everything. And it's like, well, you don't. You just have single sign-on to some stuff. Like, you're not
Right.
adding value, you're just ticking a box to say you did it. And I'd
Right.
rather have 10 good ones than thousands of rubbish ones, because that's more meaningful.
Yeah. It's funny. Just give you a glimpse into my planning. Obviously, stepping into entrepreneurship for the first time and figuring it out and making a bunch of my own mistakes.
Hey, we're all doing that.
Um, oh my goodness! And so Randy Lambert, who joined me at Intentionally from Orion, and Joe Storter, who joined me from Carson, we were doing our planning for 2025, and we're having those conversations about how are we going to grow and what does that look like. And at one point, I just sort of called time out, and I was like, guys, like nobody's chasing us. We don't have to run like there's someone chasing us. We don't have a PE firm breathing down our neck. We don't have, a board of directors that's pushing really hard. Like we can grow at a pace that we feel good about, where we can still provide clients with a really good experience. And I think that, like, to your point, we're also used to just how do we get the next client, that sometimes that gets lost.
Yeah, it's and I think, again, in the theme of things that we should learn from is, I think a really important part of entrepreneurship, no matter what world you're in, whether you're agency, technology,
Yeah.
whether you're an RIA, a big part of that entrepreneurship is remembering what you got into it for in the first place.
Yep.
Because if you can't keep checking back to that, and you're not being true to that, then you're almost certainly not bringing your full self to the task.
Yep.
And if you're not able to challenge yourself with that, well, no one else is going to either.
Right.
So, I think you've got to really own, why am I here? What am I doing here? do I still feel good about what we're doing? And if not, change.
Right, right. I met with an RIA. They're becoming a new client. I'm intentionally, I'm really excited about it. And the marketer is running a campaign. One of the first campaigns that we're going to run with her is if you're not changing it, you're choosing it. Isn't that fun?
Yeah,
I
it's
love
good.
every
I
second
like
about that. And I think that I was like, oh, I'm learning how getting life lessons from this prospect meeting because that's a nice reminder, right?
it. It's a great way. Yeah.
Anyway. All right, AJ, you know the premise of the show, and you've already given us a couple of don't do that's, but I think a lot about how learning from our mistakes is just so much more fruitful than learning from our wins and our triumphs. And so what we're trying to do here is learn from each other. So what is your don't do that, your big don't do that for our audience today?
Well,
In addition to the other three that you gave us.
this is for me. This one's kind of a little double edged, so it's a don't on both sides.
Okay.
Uh, and so as I was thinking about this, I was like, well, what are all of the things that you shouldn't do? There are so many. Don't be definitive, but don't be vague. Don't be,
Yeah.
all of those things. And I was like, when you peel back as a founder or an entrepreneur, even just someone with a lot of accountability in a business, you don't have to have founded it to face this. You get so much pressure to make decisions all the time.
Yeah.
It's in your role, and you've got to do that thinking. And so one don't is assume that you have to wear all that on your own shoulders. Like, surround yourself with people within your business, outside of your business, and consult widely. Don't feel like you've got to do it. But the flip side is, don't then be paralyzed to make a decision that runs contrarian to everybody else's advice, because that's why you're there.
Right.
Your responsibility is to consult widely and to take in lots of input and to do that. But you're in the seat because you're there to make the decision, and that may be to swim against the tide.
Right.
And that won't always be popular. And I think there are plenty in my background who would say, well, you're not afraid of making unpopular decisions. Uh, but I think it is, just understand that, it's, don't be frightened to go your own way if you really truly believe that that's the right thing
Right
to
thing to
do.
do.
Even if all of the surrounding logic is telling you it's not, but you really strongly believe, then do it. But just own the decision. Like, if it goes poorly, well, it was your call.
Right.
Don't look for a way out of it.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying don't put it all on your shoulders, and I think that's sometimes easier said than done. So, like, what does that framework look like for you? Who have you surrounded yourself with? How do you make sure that you're not buried in decisions day to day?
So
And
a
I'm
great
I'm
thing for
asking
me,
selfishly for sure.
yeah, well, look, a great thing for me, and I think you've done a good job of this with the team and intentionally already, but it's to, like, I love my leadership team. They're super talented, and I love to give them the free rein to make decisions, even though for some of them that's maybe a new level of accountability.
Yeah.
Um, and so I don't take it all on myself, because I'm less good at marketing than Emily in my team. I'm less good at sales than Jen. I would be a rubbish COO, but Em is an amazing one. So, for me, it's don't try and be better at their jobs than they are, and then rely on them to give you thoughtful input. But understand that you probably have a broader context, and so you've got to parse that input through the broader context, and you've got investors and longer term thinking and all those kind of things in frame as well. So share the load for the thinking, but understand that ultimately, there's, particularly if you have investors, there's one throat to choke, and it's yours.
Yours, yeah. So what is your network outside of your leadership team look like? I think this is, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs on a day-to-day basis, and a lot of them are definitely trying to find their people that are, experiencing the same challenges, that are trying to figure things out day to day, that they can bounce ideas off of. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. You have this tendency that a guard goes up
Yeah.
when you're in a broader context, and you have this sense of going, well, I can't be vulnerable because someone might see that I've got a question and that might make its way back to a key prospect or a client and makes them nervous. And so everything always has to be rosy. And that's why I love this theme for your podcast, being that it's like everything is not always rosy. It's
Right.
quite often
Yes.
it's like herding cats.
And that's okay.
And that's the reality that I think so many of us live with, but don't want to show. We don't want
Right.
to. We don't want to be vulnerable. So it can be tricky. I tend to have a few sounding boards who understand our industry but aren't directly associated with it.
Yeah.
Uh, so they kind of cross over. They're unlikely to be clients or prospects, but they're adjacent. They understand it. I talk to a number of people who, on a semi-regular basis, who are going through the same cycle, like different businesses, maybe in advice tech or wealth tech or not, but entrepreneurs. And so one of the great parts of working with private equity investors is they have portfolio companies, and they're at different stages of their growth, some
Right.
massive and on their way to an exit, and others are before us in the cycle. So we have gatherings to get together with them, and we get a lot of great value, particularly through our partners at Updater in terms of content and knowledge, which is phenomenal. And then I just read a lot. My reading is so boring. I remember I was in a pub in Sydney, and I was just on my own on a Sunday afternoon, just having a quiet moment and just having a pint and sitting there. And one of the staff came by to clear the table. And she's like, "Oh, what are you reading?" And I showed her, and she's like, "Wow, that's dull." Just walked off. I was like, "Well, yeah, maybe,
Yeah.
but it's also important." So
Yeah. Super
I'll read.
important. Yeah. Do you listen to any podcasts?
I don't. I'm terrible at it.
Yeah. It's
I
a
really
change.
am. I I'd much rather just talk to people. And
Yeah.
so listening to people talk to other people, I find hard to focus on.
Yeah.
So I'm old, so I read books. I
Yeah.
don't even really read online that much because like I'm old.
You're not that old. And you know what? It's funny. I have a podcast, but I wasn't listening to that many of them either. But I've just recently started to, I've found a couple of agency or folks who have built and sold large agencies, and I'm loving it. I'm like, because you don't have to read the whole book.
Yeah.
I'm a little ADD, and I get to like the, second chapter, and I'm like, all right, what are we doing next here?
Looking ahead.
Yeah. And I like to be able to click the listen at 2 times speed, I
I
think a little bit
I
too.
tried to do audiobooks like that, and I found that I was like, oh, what's 3.5 times like?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I've
Chipmunk is
listened to
what
the
that
whole
is like.
book, but
Yeah.
I didn't absorb any of it. I spend a lot of time on aeroplanes, so I try on planes as much as I can to disconnect from technology, and so books are a great way of doing it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to your don't do that for a second. So we have a lot of advisors that listen to this podcast, and I think that your advice is equally as important to them. So what should that look like for them? Who do they lean on? What a lot of advisors' businesses look like in terms of the staff and the teams and the infrastructure. So how should they think about their decision making processes and making sure that as they're trying to grow and think about their businesses differently, that they're tapping the right people and the right resources?
I think advisors have, I mean, there's so many great ways for them to do this, and if you follow along digitally, like the message to advisors is grow, 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 grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's buy something, buy another firm. You should buy another firm. And
Yeah.
that's got to be a hard message to hear constantly, particularly if that doesn't feel like either it's attainable or it's what you want to do.
Right.
And so I think for advisors, particularly those who have started and are running firms, it's to step back and think, what actually do I want to do? Like, do I want to go from serving 300 clients to serving 2,000? Or do I want to go from serving 300 clients to serving 250 because that's okay?
Yeah.
And, do I want my business to go from 750 million to 2 billion in assets under management in the next 2 years? And if I do, that's great. Let's look at a strategy that gets us there.
Yeah.
But if I am really happy with the business as it stands today, that's okay too.
Right.
So don't fall foul of like growth is the only way to drive a business forward. I think that's one thing. And then it's to understand that growth can look different. It doesn't have to be, sweating every client. It doesn't have to be buying another firm or merging it can be picking a new niche and just going after that
Yeah.
and deepening your understanding and slowly building a business that you feel really good about at a personal integrity level.
Yeah. It's interesting you're saying that. I actually feel really passionate about that. When clients come to intentionally, whether it's a tech firm or an RIA, and I mentioned this on another podcast, but it's a little bit of, I feel like I'm playing the Mark Cuban in Shark Tank a little bit because I'm like, what are your goals? You don't have any? Then why are you here? You don't know? Maybe you should think about that first. I feel like starting, going to a marketing agency or a growth agency and saying, "Hey, I'm here. I know I need things, but I don't know what I need." I get a lot of that. And
Yeah,
it's
and I
it's
don't know why I need them.
yes, it is. And it's the moments like that I like question my life choices a little bit. But then I actually enjoy helping firms figure that out. I'm like, okay, well, let's rewind. Like, you made this call for a reason. You are feeling like you need to get somewhere. Let's talk about where that is. Because I feel like what I'm good at is then telling people, okay, well, if that's where you're trying to get, this is what it's going to take. But it is alarming at the percentage of firms who really don't know where they're trying to get. And for me, coming from corporate world, and I'm sure the same is for you, like, you have to put a plan together for the next year. You have to have numbers associated with it. You have to how am I going to get there? You have to roll that has to go up to somebody higher than you to say, this is. And so just having done that my whole life, I am shocked at the number of people who really haven't gone through that exercise.
We see it with CRM change all the time. I mean, replacing a core platform is not for the faint of heart. Like
Right.
it's hard. Like
Yeah.
to any advisors listening, I mean, this sounds counterintuitive coming from me, but it's really hard. Be
Right.
really sure you want to do it. Um, but then at the point that you are, and we see this so much. There are so many RIAs who are in platforms that are just really outmoded now, and they're saying, but they're cheap. So okay, but your client relationship is the heart of your business, and you're seeing technology as an expense, not an investment.
Right.
Like move to thinking of it as an investment. If you're going to make that investment in your business, do you want to move to the technology that's 1% better? Or do you want to actually think, where do I want my business to be 3 years from now? And how do I build towards that strategically?
Right.
And that's not just CRM, it's any technology. And we have so many firms where, we move in. Practifi is very configurable, it's a very powerful platform. And one of the first things is, well, I don't want to make my team change. So how do we make it look and feel exactly like what we're moving away from? It's like, time,
Yeah.
guys, let's come back to the start of the conversation was we don't think where we are today is meeting our needs. How do we move forward and understand that we need to bring your people on a journey?
Yeah.
Because if you're not prepared to do that, then you probably shouldn't change.
Right. Yeah, there's like a business planning aspect to our industry that seems to be a little bit lacking. So maybe that's a new startup idea, but I feel like there's a step there that's, when I think I see it, I think you see it. Um, it's a hard thing to do when you've been running your business the same way for a lot of years.
Well, and often the excuse me, often the person running the business, particularly in advice firms, as they've grown organically over time, the
Right.
person running the business got in it because they wanted to be an advisor. And now they find themselves stepping back from clients and running,
Mark.
a 7, 8, 10 person shop, and they're worried about P&Ls and balance sheets and marketing plans and software, and what they really wanted to be was an advisor.
Right.
And that's a hard transition. And some people, that's really exciting and it's what they want to do, and they excel at it.
Right.
And for others, it's this constant battle. And I
Yeah.
think don't hire the next advisor, hire someone who's great at running firms.
Yeah. So, do you think this industry's love of messages around fear plays into this too. I feel like I see so much marketing default to you're going to be left behind, or you know, you're not going to have enough scale to even have any of the tools that you're going to need, or all these things. And it's just like, maybe another don't do that for our advisors listening is like, don't succumb to that. Like, put your plan in place, identify what you need to grow, and don't succumb to the fear messaging, because I feel like there's so much of that that's driving decision making.
I mean, there's so much, and there's there's a real myopia that happens as well. So, I mean, we see it on the tech side. So, what are you doing with AI? And of course, we're doing a bunch with it. But, advisors are sitting there being told, like, you need this tool, you need that tool, you've got to get AI between you and the clients. That's how you're going to grow and scale. And they're not sure whether they want to grow and scale. But the last results I saw was 96% of investors surveyed didn't want to deal with an AI solution. So if I'm an advisor and I'm racing towards that because I think that's more efficient and I'm possibly pulling away from what my clients want.
Right.
And so really understand, what business do you want to be? What business do your clients want you to be? And how is that relationship centered? And if you're happy with that, continue down that path. You can still be wildly successful.
Right. All right, everybody. For those of you that are listening, AJs don't do that. Well, there aren't many of them, but it's funny. AJ and I talked about this before we got on, that everybody that I've interviewed has said, every single person has said, well, I have a lot to choose from. And AJ and I kind of laughed and said, yeah, to be successful, you have to step in it. Like, you have to do a lot of the wrong things to get it right. That's a theme for this show that I am loving, because if you take nothing else away from the Don't Do That podcast, it's that everybody successful does a lot of things wrong, right?
Oh, man. Just so often.
Yeah. I mean, how boring to get it all right all the time.
Oh, man. I think my favorite, we use Slack internally. My favorite emoji for me is the guy palming his face.
I like the slidey face, which is a similar, feeling, I think. Yeah, it's so true. So guys, you don't have to be perfect on your way to the top. Like, you figure it out as you go. You learn from your own mistakes, and you hopefully, utilizing this podcast, you can learn from everybody else's. So what we're not doing today, just as a reminder, is we're not putting every decision on our shoulders. We're creating a strong leadership team, a strong network of outside people, to make sure that we have a good, balanced thought process to our decision making. But we're taking it on when we make those decisions to take responsibility for the good or the bad, right?
Yeah, you got to own it.
Own it. All right, I love that. Well, I appreciate you so much. I love seeing you. I love working with your team. Emily and we went from mentor and mentee to now just a really nice friendship, and I'm super thankful for that. And I'm watching you guys daily and wish you lots of continued success.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, AJ.
See ya.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to be notified when new episodes become available. And please consider giving us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. This podcast is sponsored by Intentionally, a financial services growth engine design consultancy and agency. If you want to learn more, please email me at kelly@growintentionally.com. Thank you again for listening, and check back to hear what we're not doing next.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Kelly Waltrich. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.